Hey everyone, welcome back to the Harvard News Recap of the Week. We have a lot to go over. It's actually the last 2 weeks because we've been working on all this other content. You probably saw the HP pre-built review. That was a nightmare. Really fun to work on though, for all of the worst possible reasons. We also posted the Fractal Epic review, which is a case review. And if you want to check that out, that is on the channel as well. You should check it out. But anyway, in the news, the Steam Frame, Valve's newest wordmark filing or trademark filings with the USPTO popping up. Also in handheld news, GPD has announced its new Win 5, and on its marketing page for the product, they talk about it being the ultimate SteamOS handheld. So SteamOS getting a couple mentions this week. Lenovo has its Legion Go 2, and bad news, $1,350 for the Z2 Extreme version of it. Additionally, NVIDIA is up to 94% market share now for add-in boards, from 92% earlier this year and 88%, I think it was a year, roughly 2 years ago, something like that. So they are still climbing, and there's plenty more to talk about, so let's get into it. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Lianli Lanquil 217. We recently reviewed the Lanquil 217 on the channel and found that its thermal performance is overall competitive with other top cases. The Lanquil 217 combines a set of larger 170mm front-mounted fans with more standard-sized internal case fans for high airflow. The front of the case offers the ability to rearrange the fans to offset them towards either the CPU or the GPU, with wood accents along the case to give it a unique look. Learn more about the Lianli Lanquil 217 at the link in the description below. All right, first of all, quick update on the AI GPU black market video that was taken down because a lot of people have been asking. There's no developments on the legal side, so the way it works is we filed our counterclaim, YouTube accepted it, YouTube says, okay, we're not involved anymore, YouTube's not involved anymore, and it's up to the claimant, Bloomberg in this situation, to file a lawsuit and prove that to YouTube in order to keep the video down, and if they do not, within the 10 business day period, then in that situation the video goes back online. Now, at this stage, they have not filed a lawsuit, probably because their claims are complete and utter horseshit, and I will fight them. And secondly, it has been about 10 business days, depending on how you count, the first day that the claim was accepted and Labor Day, which I guess is probably not a business day. So that would be likely Monday or Tuesday, which is going to be the 8th or 9th or something like that. If it doesn't go online at that point, then there's a couple possibilities. One is that it in combination with being a story about the Bloomberg abuse of the DMCA and copyright strike system, because they would have at that point struck us with no follow through on the legal side, which just makes the whole thing look like complete bullshit. It would merge with a YouTube problem as well. And we would definitely be, we'd be looking at both of those immediately. So we'll keep posted. At this stage, I hope it doesn't come to that, because the video has now been offline for 5 times as long as it was online for what we maintain was a legitimate use of content and was an illegitimate strike. If none of this means anything to you, we have a separate video where I flew to Bloomberg and we talk about it there. But what I'll say for now is that at this point, it looks like it'll go back up. YouTube doesn't make it precisely clear when exactly that happens. They do say it will happen in the language in the email, so we're just kind of waiting on them. Yeah, I mean, as for us, we are keeping all options open, including legal remedies as we see necessary. But when it's back up, we will run another video. We'll talk about the whole situation. I have a lot of thoughts on the YouTube side of the process as well, where there's some things YouTube does that are just part of the law and they have no control over. And then there's other things they do that they have full control over. And so we've got a lot to talk about. Anyway, video should be back up really soon. I am excited for it to go back live because the thing I care about the most is that people see the work, because we worked really hard on it. It's cool information. And if you don't mind when it's back up, please go check it out, even if you already watched it, because the first thing I need to do is collect some data on sort of like benchmarking YouTube to see what does it require to get a video that has been suppressed back into algorithmic rotation, because they have fucked it completely by putting it at 0 views for over 10 business days, which is precisely how the system seems like they want it to work. But that's a story for later. Anyway, quick update on the backer campaign. We're closing orders for the backer tiers on Monday, September 8th. That's the last day you'll be able to order and get the exclusive digital rewards on the combo packs. Individual items will remain available after that. We'll also be shipping out 128 gigabyte Micro Center USB drives to everyone who orders a backer tier. I have purchased basically the entire United States supply of these, so I'm sorry if you wanted to buy one. Those will include a copy of the movie on them, rendered at high quality and without the GN Store ads in it, and they'll also include the bonus videos. After that, we're going to send out an invite to everyone on the Kingpin backer tier list with the Q&A signups. So there's going to be like a group Q&A session, a bunch of them, and we're going to have time slots. I'm doing it this way so that everyone has the best kind of opportunity to find a time that's compatible with your schedule and your time zone. As a side note, if you are someone who works in the big corporate world and you have experience with things that can do this, please let me know your suggestions of software or basically group calendar session management type of systems in the comments below so that I can find something. And then as for other updates, we're working on converting the movie into a full article on the website. That was one of our stretch goals that we had on the store page that we hit. We're about 40% complete with that conversion, so that's really exciting. That means you'll have an article version of it without any third-party ads. And we also delivered on the timeline article of the export controls. If you want that resource as well, that's on the website. So that's kind of your updates. Everything's moving. We're starting shipping next week. I am working currently on making a separate video about how we are going to write thousands of USB keys as efficiently as possible. I did not think it would be that many. That was a miscalculation. But the cool thing is, and thank you, by the way, for the miscalculation, but the cool thing is we got to experiment with some really cool technology. And some of it's like really basic and like it's just dumb technology. It's not that advanced, but it's really good at what it does. So we're gonna have a separate video where I'm experimenting with something new and fun to learn, which is how the do I take the entire United States supply of Micro Center 128 gigabyte USB drives and then put files on them without it taking like a year. So we'll see. I've got a thing on that. All right, we'll begin shipping those packs next week, and then they will be shipping for the next 3 months or so because the volume has been insane. And if you want to grab one of the backer tiers, you can do it now. This is basically the last opportunity. We'll close it, as I said earlier, in a couple days, and then that'll be it. All right, up first, Valve filed a trademark for the name Steam Frame, technically 2-word marks. And of course, the internet instantaneously picked up on this. As you all know, gamers constantly monitoring the USPTO. It's one of our favorite pastimes in the gaming community or something. Sure seems like it anyway. Anyway, this follows recent rumors we've covered for a revival of Steam machines, long-standing rumors now of new VR and controllers, and Valve's hardware team seems to really be busy right now. The trademark filings are pretty simple. One of these ended up on Reddit pretty soon after being filed, so we went to the USPTO and we pulled the details. One of the word marks is on the basis and in the category of, quote, computer hardware, computer networking hardware, computer peripherals, computer hardware and computer software for the reproduction, processing, and streaming of audio, video, data, text, and multimedia content, end quote. There was a second word mark filing. This one is more definitionally a console. The USPTO application from Valve says this Steam Frame word mark is to cover the categories of, quote, computer game consoles for recreational gameplay and video game consoles, video game accessories, namely controllers for video games. Now this sounds complicated, but what this means is everything is computer. Valve is trying to make sure that they are defining a computer in words that a government can understand. Now this is interesting because no one else has picked up on this yet in the news reporting business, and it's really been confusing to us. The thing that no one's picked up on, that you'll get here exclusively, is that it does say, quote, for recreational game playing, which instantly rules out most MMORPGs because the grind is real and it's very serious. It's not fun anymore, but you do it anyway for some reason. You're not quite sure why. You've been doing that for the last 10 years, and it seems like the right thing to continue doing. We covered Valve back when it first tried to launch Steam machines before it pulled the plug many years ago. The Steam machines never made it to market, although SteamOS found its way out eventually through the Steam Deck, and it's been successful. Its Proton translation layer enables better frame-time pacing than Windows, as we've seen in some of our testing like of the Steam Deck. And that's also promising for a potential desktop if the Steam Frame will have SteamOS. And we really hope that it does. We've been asking Valve actually for a SteamOS desktop-ready installation for over a year now, most recently a couple months ago, and they have continually said, nope, they're not ready. Technically, you could take it from the distribution that's publicly available of SteamOS that's intended for the Steam Deck and handhelds. You could put that on a desktop. We'd really like to kind of test it like as it's intended to be used on a desktop, but anyway, at this point, it looks like Valve is preparing a desktop-style launch of something. Hopefully, it's something that's open as an ecosystem to outside vendors. That would really only make sense. That's kind of how Valve's been trying to do things. And it does seem like that their hardware team is incredibly busy right now, which is kind of exciting. Hopefully the stuff's actually good. We'll see when it comes out. But up next, there's an updated research report from John Petty Research showing the market share distribution of add-in board video cards between the 3 different brands. So NVIDIA has now grown in market share. It's gone up to 94%, as of the latest report was 92% most recently before that. JPR's Q2 2024 report had NVIDIA at 88% for perspective, then 92% in Q1 2025, and now 94%. Intel remains effectively at zero, with AMD shrinking from 12% to 6% over that time period. Now, for Intel, it is selling units. We just think that they're registering as noise in this data because it's such a low amount. Likely, though, those units that they are selling are contributing to chipping away at AMD on both sides of the pricing spectrum, although less noticeably than the transfer from AMD to NVIDIA, which registers in this data. This change is accompanied by a reported attachment rate by JPR, or the rate of installation of video cards in computers, increasing quarter over quarter to a total attachment rate of 154%. Excess of 100% indicates greater than one board per computer sold. JPR's reporting is comparable like for like against other prior reporting, so this is detected in their data. We think there's a few things at play here. First of all three companies are pursuing data center right now, and what's interesting with that is obviously some are more successful than others in that pursuit. NVIDIA is more successful than, for example, Intel, which has barely sold anything by comparison to NVIDIA. But even with that, we'll just call it a distraction, even though that is the kind of the core business now. Even with that diversion of supply to data center, is a word that NVIDIA will like, rather than the add-in board consumer markets and professional markets and things like that. If NVIDIA maintains a higher overall absolute volume across all markets that it's involved in, then obviously its market share is just going to grow because that's how the numbers work. So if AMD and Intel are also moving supply over to things like data center where they've got maybe a couple major customers for their GPUs, and they reduce their volume disproportionately from NVIDIA in the other markets, then NVIDIA will continue to gain market share in those other markets just by maintaining a higher absolute numbers advantage. So that's maybe one of the things going on. Intel is making B50 and B60 GPUs, but they've only just started selling the B50s, and we don't have any reason to believe that those are wildly successful. And Intel is also still generally trying to establish itself, like with the B580. For example, when we were traveling in Asia for our black market GPU content, almost none of the vendors we spoke with have any customers of Intel GPUs. Now, as for AMD, we've already posted multiple videos on our thoughts on that situation, but AMD's price bait and switch and fake MSRPs really damaged the company's reception following launch for the RX 9000 GPUs, and it showed that AMD is sticking with the formula of deducting slightly from NVIDIA's pricing. It also doesn't help that AMD's marketing can't keep its damn mouth shut and just focus on making a competing, compelling product. But this is AMD's game to lose at this point. It is doing its best at doing so. And as frustrating as it is to see NVIDIA become more and more of a monopoly and exercise its position of privilege and power increasingly to the extent that it's now working directly with the US government or sometimes opposing the US government, it's in a different class at this point. But even though it's frustrating to see this monopolization, it's also frustrating to see AMD continuing to botch its launches one way or another. At the same time, NVIDIA has managed to engineer itself a position that's difficult to crack. And the line between being simply a better competitor or more innovative and an antitrust violation, that's a pretty thin line. Intel went way past that line in about 2005, 2007, somewhere in there, with the AMD lawsuit at that time that Intel lost. Now, in NVIDIA's case, it is a technological stronghold that NVIDIA has built around largely CUDA. And so for at-home AI use cases, NVIDIA remains the go-to choice as a result of that. For production, professional use cases like ours, like with Adobe Premiere, it's CUDA. Photoshop, it's CUDA. CUDA's everywhere, and that is what has secured NVIDIA its position in a lot of these cases. This has also become a bit of a feedback loop because developers will optimize for the most prevalent technology or library or whatever it may be, and that's increasingly NVIDIA, and they're going to increasingly build and optimize for that. Good luck convincing some of these companies to try and do something like OpenCL when none of their customers are really using it. So it's a feedback loop, and data centers see similar lock-ins just at a larger scale per customer. And anyway, point being that there's things that NVIDIA is doing that do seem like questionable monopolistic practices. And at the same time, there's stuff that AMD is not doing, and there's legitimate technological advantages that NVIDIA has. And so it's difficult to kind of deconstruct this whole picture to understand where those lines are drawn between potential anti-competitive practices versus just simply being better. And a lot of it is just simply being better while AMD and Intel are playing catch up and fumbling the ball regularly. So anyway, that's the change in market share. We're going to see that feedback loop continue until somebody actually is able to compete. I guess we'll keep following it. Up next, AMD's Z2 Extreme is starting to show up in handheld devices. Lenovo previously announced its new Legion Go series of handheld PCs, but they started with the simpler Go S variant, which did not have the detachable controllers. Now it has formally unveiled its Legion Go Gen 2, which has the Z2 Extreme SoC and the Z2 Non-Extreme. And this follows the Legion Go that we reviewed previously, where it was mostly interesting for the detachable controllers and some of the other smaller gimmicks that were still functional that they included with it. The original Legion Go we already reviewed, but the new handheld is marketed as coming soon on the Lenovo store, and it says it includes an 8.8-inch 144Hz OLED with variable refresh rate. That 144Hz stands out in particular as 120 became popular in the last generation. The device claims a 74-watt-hour battery, maintains its detachable controllers and the included kickstand, and it has updated core specs. The Go Gen 2 has a Windows 11 rollout with either the Z2 or Z2 Extreme SoCs. The AMD Z2 SoC is a Zen 4 architecture part with an 8-core 16-thread configuration at up to 5.1 gigahertz with a configurable TDP of 15 to 30 watts and a default of 28. Now, adding the word extreme to that has a massive change. It goes to Zen 5 and Zen 5C from Zen 4, which brings us to the reminder that AMD's Z2 names spans Zen 2 to Zen 5, which at this point just seems intentionally misleading to consumers. That's at least 4 generations of architecture for one product name, especially depending on how you slice the C variants. And that's ignoring the Z2 Non-Extreme, which is basically a rebrand of the Z1 Extreme. The only real change is the CTDP and the lower GPU clock for the Z2. Best Buy has detailed listings up for variations on the Legion Go 2. The Go 2 with Z2 Extreme has 32 gigabytes of memory, a 1 terabyte PCIe SSD, and Windows for an overwhelming $1,350, surpassing rumors of even the Xbox ROG Ally X pricing X. The Go 2 with Z2 Non-Extreme and 16 gigabytes of memory is somehow $1,100. The Go S variant, which is older now, doesn't have detachable controllers. It's been out on the market for a while, but for pricing purposes, the same store lists that for $600 to $900. When we reviewed the Legion Go originally, it was commonly around $750 to $850 or so. The biggest disappointment here is obviously the pricing, $1,350. It's starting to make these unobtainable for a lot of people, especially the original market, where the original market for this kind of handheld gaming device really was like, okay, maybe you have a console or a computer already, you want something portable, or you want a replacement while you wait for something else. Either way, it was more affordable, like $500 to $700 was kind of starting to push it, but people were okay with it. And getting into $1,300 plus, I mean, that's just like, it just destroys that part of the target user base. So this is especially true because the Z2 Non-Extreme is basically a Z1 Extreme, but it's $1,100 for some reason. And so it's not even really like that new by comparison. Still, we intend on buying these or sourcing them for review as soon as they're available and we can get them. So we'll have benchmarks up for you. We're not sure when yet. Lenovo should be launching these in October, so probably sometime around then. Might take us a bit to benchmark them properly, but that'll be the plan. All right, up next, back at Computex in May, Intel announced its B50 and B60 Arc Pro GPUs. We covered those at the time lightly, but we mostly just did a teardown of that dual B60 GPU from Maxsun, and these are targeted at the so-called AI use cases. The B50 is the first of these to launch, and that just happened. Prices depend on partners, but base MSRP is set at $350 for the B50. These B50 GPUs are 70 watts total board power with 16 Xe cores, 16 gigabytes of memory, 224 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth on a PCIe by 8 interface. And for reference, the Intel B570 has 18 Xe cores and 10 gigabytes of memory on a 380 gigabyte per second bandwidth. Friend of the channel, Wendell of Level 1 Techs, recently posted a head-to-head review against NVIDIA's RTX A1000, which we mostly found interesting because of the model of B50 he had, which is a half-height board. That's always really fun to see. You can check out his video for his charts and stuff too. Phoronix also has a detailed review with benchmarks on their website, if this interests you. As for Wendell, he'll be visiting us really soon, like when we're filming this within days. And so we'll have that up in the coming weeks sometime. We've got some fun discussion topics with him. He's actually doing, I don't want to spoil his content, but he's mostly coming here for something for his channel, and so that'll be over there, so you should go subscribe if you're not, or check it regularly when he publishes that, because it's going to be a really fun video. I am super excited about what we're doing. It's going on his channel, and then for us, we're doing some discussion topics that do involve Linux. And my objective is, I told Wendell, I messaged him and I said, I have an idea for a content piece that's going to get you canceled. I'm going to ask you which distribution of Linux I should use. That's right. That's what starts it. If it's not the right distribution, it's all over. Up next, reported on Tech Power Up, which reported on it via video cards, which reported on it via Board Channels, a forum for board partner employees. And now coming back full circle to us in the media centipede, I guess. There's a post that says 5060 non-TIs and 5060 Ti 8GB models are going to see a reduction in supply. Specifically, the post says 15% reduction to board partners for the 5060 Ti 8GB and 30% for the 5060 non-TI. The post says that the price, quote, will remain stable or even see a slight increase, end quote. And that's the extent of the rumor. It's basically this screenshot. Typically, when things like this happen, there's only a few reasons for it. One would be if the product is discontinued. Another would be if there's a refresh causing the discontinuance of the product. And then the third might be if the company is trying to stabilize pricing by not flooding out a bunch more supply to the channel, to their partners, which could potentially drive down the pricing. And so it could be a price maintenance thing from NVIDIA, trying to keep the prices as high and elevated as possible, just basic economics. But limited inventory would help maintain a higher price. Up next, Intel has a 52-core Nova Lake CPU. This has been in the news a little bit the last couple weeks. But Video Cards spotted a shipping manifest, which is posted by NBD. I assume that means no big deal. It appears to be a shipping manifest website. It just seems like a good name. That's what we're going to go with. Anyway, contains information about Intel's inbound Nova Lake S CPUs and the corresponding platforms. Intel has shipped high core count CPUs before, like the 3175X that we reviewed a long time ago. So 52 plus cores isn't new to Intel. Of course, they have Xeons, but these appear to align with an LGA 1954 socket of similar sizing to standard desktop motherboard sockets, like for Z890. The manifest is from late June, which includes a few different items. One is an aluminum LGA 1954 jig, which we'd assume is a mechanical testing platform. We actually have some of these. This is pretty cool. I don't think I've ever seen anyone else with one of these. This was given to us by a motherboard manufacturer. This is an LGA 2011 keep out gauge to measure the keep out zone around the socket. So a board partner would use this to make sure they're not in conflict with like a cap or something. But there's other stuff like this that is used for testing socket pressure, for test tension, for testing installation or mounting of cooler products, keep out zones, things like that. So this appears to be one of the items, something like it on the manifest. The jig for LGA 1954 is measured at 45 by 37.5 millimeters and lists 28 core and 52 core configurations. The block itself is predictably larger at 58 by 53 by 5.2. The other lines include various other jigs and blocks of differing sizes, and then a PCB tester model. There aren't a lot of rumors about these parts yet, and that includes a name beyond the code name. An LGA 1954 socket part would have more pins and would necessitate a new motherboard, but maybe not new coolers. There were rumors earlier this week about a potential 365K CPU, which would be a refresh in the existing socket. I think it's 1851 right now for like Z890 and so forth. That platform, if it doesn't get a refresh, will only have one real launch. And if it does get a refresh and it's just a refresh, that's still disappointing because you don't even get 2 real generations on it. So that's been a major criticism that's totally valid of Intel for the last several generations now. This one's particularly bad though. So they might get a refresh, but it doesn't look like it'll be substantial. And we'll be moving over to new boards for Intel pretty soon, it looks like. It doesn't have to be like AM4, where it's alive forever apparently. One of our comments in the 5500 X3D review said, I didn't hear no bell. It's not like, it doesn't have to be that, but more than one generation would be great. Up next, the US suggests chip tariffs again without details again. So September 4th, the White House briefing that was held, led by President Trump, stated that the chip tariffs will be coming shortly. These have been mentioned a few times now, and this follows previous statements indicating the same over the last several months. The president stated, quote, I've discussed it with people here, chips and semiconductors, and we'll be putting tariffs on companies that aren't coming in. We'll be putting a tariff very shortly. You probably are hearing we'll be putting a fairly substantial tariff, or not that high, but a fairly substantial tariff, end quote. So there's not any real information here yet. That is new news, though. It's been mentioned again. It's related to semiconductors. It's likely in relation to prior discussion about potential semiconductor tariffs, so those have been at points stated to be potentially 100%. There was a caveat at one point where it was 100% or high, except for companies that do some manufacturing in the US, but it wasn't clear if it meant manufacturing of the product that gets exempted from the tariff or manufacturing at all, exempting all products they make, whether it's in the US or not. We thought it was probably going to be the latter, meaning making literally anything in the US probably exempted them based on how it was written in English, but it's not 100% clear. So anyway, that's the news on the tariff situation for semiconductors. Not a lot yet, but still, it'll be important if anything ever happens there. Up next, GPD has the Win 5. They've announced handheld gaming PC. They emailed us to tell us about it, and there's a few things that are interesting. First of all, they mentioned that SteamOS will be one of the options on their page, or at least you could install it, I guess. Separately, though, on Twitter, the company noted that it's considering going up to 128 gigabytes of memory. This would be insane overkill and achieve nothing for well over 99.9% of users on a handheld, but it'd certainly be the biggest number on any of the handheld box spec sheets. The company's Indiegogo campaign currently has most of the details. The GPD Win 5 has an AMD AI Max Plus 395, which is a 16-core, 32-thread Strix-Halo part running Zen 5 and up to 5.1 gigahertz using a CTDP of 45 to 120 watts. The Indiegogo page also notes Hall effect triggers, an 80 watt-hour battery, 2 to 4 terabyte SSD options, 64 gigabytes of memory, and a 120 hertz 1080p display. Physically, the handheld looks relatively thick in renders and uses a good amount of that area for its heatsink and ventilation at the rear. However, right now, many of these are either renders or seemingly pre-final images, so this may change. Most interesting to us was the line about, quote, creating the ultimate SteamOS handheld, end quote, already getting focus for not being Windows. GPD also has renders of a detachable battery, which clips to the back of the device and is shown connected by wires in other renders. All right, so that is it for this one. Thanks for watching. As always, you can subscribe for more or go to the store to grab some of the backer tiers, store.gamersnexus.net, and please check back sometime next week, I guess, if the video goes live. And if it doesn't, oh boy, will I have a lot to say, and we'll worry about that if it happens. All right, thanks for watching. See you all next time.